Okay, so you want to own a gas station. You're on the couch refreshing your bank app, watching the number not change. Buy a station, sell some gas, watch the money roll in every time someone fills up. Easy. Everybody needs gas, so this is basically a money printer with a roof on it. Here's the problem. On most of that gas, you're making about 3 cents a gallon, not 3%. 3 cents. The pump isn't the business, it's the bait. And by the end of this video, you'll understand what's actually buried underneath it that can cost you over $1 million and follow you for the rest of your life, long after you've sold the place. Plus, why the real profit in this industry has almost nothing to do with fuel at all, and everything to do with what happens once someone walks through your front door. There are 3 real versions of this business, and the differences between them matter more than people think before they buy. Tier 1 is the small independent station, a single brand of fuel, 4 to 6 pumps, a modest convenience store, usually in a smaller town or a less competitive corridor. Buying an existing one, real estate included, typically runs $300,000 to $800,000. This is the tier most first-time buyers picture, and it's also the tier with the least room for error because there's no scale to absorb a bad month. For reference, that's still more money than you'll see in your bank account across the next 15 years combined, and this is considered the cheap way in. On top of the purchase price, most independent stations bought second-hand need $50,000 to $150,000 in immediate upgrades to pass inspection and open legally. Tier 2 is the branded station with a real convenience store attached. Think a Shell or Chevron location with a proper store footprint, maybe a fast food counter inside. This requires buying into a fuel brand supply agreement, paying franchise and signage fees, and building out a store that can actually compete on convenience items. All in, that's typically $1 million to $3 million, and the brand agreement usually locks you into buying fuel exclusively from them at a margin they control, not you. Brand conversion alone, repainting canopies, replacing signage, updating the store to the brand's visual standards can run $75,000 to $200,000 on its own, and it's a cost the franchise agreement typically requires you to repeat every 7 to 10 years to keep the brand current. Tier 3 is the highway travel center, the massive multi-pump, multi-lane operation off a major interstate, often with a full food court, showers, and parking for 18-wheelers. These are built, not bought casually, and a ground-up build can run $5 million to $20 million or more, depending on the number of pumps and the size of the store. At this scale, the fuel pumps are almost an afterthought. The entire property is engineered around getting a truck driver or a road-tripping family to spend 20 minutes and $40 inside the store. But the pumps in the building are just the entry fee. The first cost nobody mentions until it's too late is the underground storage tank, and this is the thing buried under the hook of this video, literally. Every gas station sits on top of 1 to 4 massive steel or fiberglass tanks holding thousands of gallons of fuel, and the EPA requires ongoing leak monitoring for every single one, including regular testing and record-keeping that has to be maintained continuously, or the station can be shut down for non-compliance. To put the scale of the risk in perspective, environmental researchers estimate that just 10 gallons of leaked gasoline is enough to contaminate 12 million gallons of groundwater, which is why federal law requires every tank owner to demonstrate they can cover at least $1 million in contamination damages, usually through insurance or a state fund. Installing or replacing a tank properly runs $100,000 to $300,000 depending on size and site conditions, and older single-walled steel tanks, common at stations built before the 1990s, carry meaningfully higher leak risk than the newer double-walled fiberglass systems, which is exactly why a station's age matters as much as its location when you're evaluating a purchase. And if one of those tanks is ever found to be leaking, the liability doesn't always land where you'd expect. In a 1993 case out of West Point, Indiana, Shell was sued after tanks leaked at a station it had supplied but never actually owned. Shell tried to argue the independent dealer bore the responsibility, but the Indiana Supreme Court disagreed, ruling that Shell had operated the site closely enough to be held liable and ordered the company to pay millions in cleanup costs and legal fees. Oil companies learned from that case. Today, the 5 largest oil companies own roughly 1% of the gas stations carrying their own brand names, precisely because owning the tank means owning the liability. The remediation cost for a serious contamination case can run anywhere from $500,000 to well over $2 million, and in many states, that liability attaches to whoever owns or operates the property when the leak is discovered, not necessarily whoever caused it, meaning it can resurface and become your problem even after you've sold the station to someone else. The second cost is brand and supply agreements, and it's the one that quietly caps your upside. Branded stations don't get to shop around for the cheapest fuel supplier. They're locked into buying from their brand at a wholesale price set by that brand, plus paying ongoing franchise and signage fees that can run $20,000 to $50,000 a year, depending on the agreement. That's more than most people make in 6 months, just for the right to put a familiar logo on your sign. These agreements typically run 5 to 10 years, with early termination penalties that can run into 6 figures. The third cost is credit card processing fees, and on a margin this thin, it's genuinely brutal. Card networks typically charge 1.5% to 3% per transaction. On a $60 fill-up, that's $1 to $2 gone to the card network, which, remember, can be more than the entire profit margin on the fuel itself. Some stations offer a cash discount specifically because credit card fees can turn an already thin fuel sale into an outright loss. The fourth cost is environmental liability insurance, which exists specifically because of that underground tank risk, and it isn't optional in any meaningful sense. Most lenders and franchise agreements require it. Depending on the site's age and history, that coverage can run $10,000 to $40,000 a year on top of standard property and liability insurance. The fifth cost is shrinkage and drive-offs, and it's the one that eats away at margin, so gradually most owners underestimate it until they see the annual total. Convenience stores lose inventory to theft, spoilage, and register errors at rates that can run 1.5% to 3% of total sales. On a $600,000 a year store, that's $9,000 to $18,000 vanishing before it ever shows up as profit. And drive-offs, customers who pump gas and leave without paying, are a real, recurring cost specifically in this business, since fuel is dispensed before payment is guaranteed. Most stations budget a specific line item just for this, and it's money that simply doesn't exist in almost any other retail category. Stack those 5 together: tank compliance, brand fees, card processing, environmental coverage, and shrinkage, and you start to see why a business that looks like pure cash flow from the outside is actually running on margins so thin that a single bad month with a tank inspection can wipe out an entire year of profit. None of these 5 costs show up on the simple gas station for sale listing that first-time buyers fall in love with. They show up in the fine print of the environmental disclosure report, the franchise agreement, and the merchant services contract. 3 documents most first-time buyers skim instead of actually reading line by line. Here's how this business actually makes money, and it has almost nothing to do with the pumps out front. The real mechanic is this: fuel is a loss leader, and the convenience store is the actual business. That 3 cents a gallon margin exists purely to get a car to physically stop at your location. Once that person is standing inside your store, the economics flip completely. A fountain drink, a bag of chips, a pack of cigarettes, a lottery ticket, these carry margins of 30% to 50%, sometimes higher. A single high-margin snack and drink purchase can generate more profit than filling an entire 20-gallon tank. Industry-wide convenience store merchandise typically accounts for the majority of a station's total gross profit, even though it represents a fraction of total sales volume. Fuel might be 70% of the dollars flowing through the register, but it can be responsible for less than a third of the actual profit. This is why the store layout, the register placement, and even where the bathroom key is kept are all deliberately designed to walk every fuel customer past as much high-margin inventory as possible before they leave. You've experienced this exact mechanic yourself, actually. It's called walking in for gas and walking out $14 poorer with a hot dog you didn't plan on buying. The second mechanic is price visibility and margin compression. That giant illuminated sign out front isn't just marketing, it's a live, public price war with every station within eyesight. Because fuel prices are posted in 3-foot numbers visible from the road, stations are locked into matching or beating their nearest competitor almost in real time, or losing traffic instantly. This is exactly why the margin sits at a few cents a gallon instead of a few dollars. Any station that tried to charge meaningfully more would simply watch cars drive past to the competitor down the street. Owners who don't watch competitor pricing daily can lose significant volume within days without even noticing why. Some operators check competitor pricing multiple times a day and adjust their own within minutes, because a 2-cent gap on a busy corner can mean dozens of cars choosing the other station before lunch. The third mechanic is volume rebates from fuel suppliers. Some brand agreements include rebates paid back to the station based on total gallons sold in a given period, meaning a station's profitability isn't just about the margin per gallon, it's about hitting volume thresholds that unlock better wholesale pricing on the next shipment. A station that falls just short of a volume tier in a slow month doesn't just miss out on extra profit, it can end up paying a meaningfully higher wholesale price on every gallon going forward, which then makes it harder to compete on the sign price, which then costs it more volume, which can push it even further from the next rebate tier. Owners who track this closely sometimes intentionally sell fuel at a thinner than usual margin near the end of a rebate period specifically to clear the volume threshold, treating a short-term loss on paper as an investment in a better wholesale price for the following months. And the mechanic hanging over the entire industry right now is the EV transition. As electric vehicle adoption grows, fuel volume at the pump is expected to gradually decline over the coming decades in many markets, which directly threatens the traffic-generating function the pumps exist to serve in the first place. A 2019 analysis by Boston Consulting Group found that between 25% and 80% of gas stations nationwide could become unprofitable within 12 years as EV adoption accelerates. And that study was published before a wave of newer policies aimed at speeding up the transition even further. Forward-looking operators are already adding EV charging bays alongside traditional pumps, treating it less as a replacement for gas sales and more as a new way to keep bringing people into the store. Because remember, the store was always the actual business. This shift also changes the customer behavior the whole model was built around. An EV charging session can take 20 to 40 minutes compared to 5 minutes at a traditional pump, which means a station built around charging needs to think much more like a destination, a place worth sitting and spending money at, than a quick 5-minute stop. Stations that adapt their store layout and food offerings for a longer dwell time now are positioning themselves for a very different-looking industry a decade from now, while stations that don't may find their entire traffic generation model quietly eroding underneath them. The fourth mechanic is ancillary services, and it's how the smartest operators pad margins that fuel and even the convenience store can't reach on their own, because fuel margin compression, card fees, and shrinkage are all structurally difficult to fix, while a car wash, a food counter, and EV charging are all levers an owner can actually pull. A car wash attached to a station can add $80,000 to $200,000 a year in high-margin revenue on relatively modest equipment investment, because unlike fuel, there's no visible price war, and customers rarely comparison shop a car wash the way they do gas prices. Lottery ticket sales generate a small commission per ticket sold, but at high volume, that commission adds up to real money with essentially zero additional labor cost. ATM fees, propane exchange, and air pump charges are all small on their own, but layered together, they're the difference between a station that survives a soft fuel quarter and one that doesn't. Some operators go further and add a small quick-service restaurant counter, a sandwich shop, or a regional fast food brand, which can outperform the convenience store's own margins per square foot, turning what used to be a footnote into a second real business operating out of the same building. Let's run the numbers on a Tier 2 branded station with a solid convenience store attached. Optimistic scenario. The station sells 80,000 gallons a month at a 3-cent margin. That's $2,400 a month, or roughly $28,800 a year from fuel alone. The convenience store, driven by strong foot traffic from that fuel volume, generates $600,000 in annual sales at a blended 35% margin, $210,000 in gross profit. Ancillary services, a small car wash, and lottery commissions add another $60,000 in high-margin revenue on top of that. After payroll for a small crew running the store across 2 shifts, utilities, brand fees, insurance, and card processing, you're looking at roughly $110,000 in net profit for the year. That number is more money than the total worth of everything you currently own, and it's considered a solid but unremarkable year in this business. Realistic scenario. A competitor 2 blocks away drops prices, forcing you to match and shaving your fuel margin down to break even for 3 months straight, costing you the entire $28,800 fuel contribution for the year. Convenience store sales come in 15% softer than projected due to slightly lower overall traffic, cutting that gross profit to roughly $170,000. Shrinkage and a couple of bad drive-off months run higher than budgeted, costing an extra $6,000. And a routine tank inspection turns up a minor leak, triggering $180,000 in remediation and reporting costs that weren't budgeted for. Run all of that through the same year, and your $110,000 optimistic profit turns into a loss of roughly $70,000. A swing of $180,000 driven by one price war, one soft quarter, and one inspection finding, none of which is unusual in this industry. Then there's the scenario that actually ends ownership entirely, and it's not hypothetical. In 2004, an Indiana gas station chain called Keel Brothers Oil Company, a company with real operating stations, not some shell corporation, went bankrupt, leaving behind contaminated tanks the company no longer had the money to clean up. The state ended up footing the bill, more than $21 million in taxpayer-funded decontamination, according to reporting confirmed by the Associated Press. That's not a worst-case hypothetical for shock value. That's what actually happens when a real operator runs out of runway before the cleanup does. And it's not an isolated story. A 2007 Federal Accountability Report estimated the total nationwide cleanup bill for leaking gas station tanks at over $22 billion, with more than 500,000 confirmed leaks across the country. Full-site remediation in a serious contamination case can take years to resolve, and in some states can prevent the property from being sold or refinanced until the cleanup is certified complete, turning what looked like real estate you own into a liability you're stuck holding, generating negative income the entire time. For scale, a bill like the one Keel Brothers left behind is more money than everyone you know personally will earn in their lifetimes combined, and the tanks responsible for it were sometimes installed decades before the final owner even took over the property. That's the real lesson of this business. It isn't the pump price that determines whether you make it, it's what's sitting in the ground underneath it, and whether you found out about a problem there before you signed or 10 years after, because at that point, it's no longer a business decision, it's just a bill with your name on it.